Hey, what's up guys? It's Oakley, and yes, the new Bretonnia roster is out. I'm going to be playing a game here with myself, playing as Carcassonne, and I'm going to be facing Indie Pride. I have the Fay Enchantress. I know there's like a couple of you who get ticked off when I pronounce things in French for some reason, but Enchantress is, I believe, spelled the same both in English and in French, so there's no way to say the word is one or the other. I will pronounce it as I like, and this unicorn is giving me the go-ahead with this approving look. In any case, we can go ahead and look at my deployment here. I have a contingent of battle pilgrims over on my left flank, a lot of these guys, because I always like bringing fodder troops. And they're going to be shored up by the Fay in the center, the Grail Relique, and then two paladins in support on barded warhorses. And then in behind these guys, I have some of the more, I guess, going higher tier in terms of Bretonnia units, Spearman unit, and then the foot squires here who do handle themselves pretty well in battle. Backing this up on this flank, I have two of the new peasant bowman units. I do like the coats on them, but these guys have fire arrows, which is an important kind of ability to choose when you're fighting the Wood Elves because they're going to have lots of trees. My main infantry body up through the center has 4 spearmen at arms with shields, and then 4 men-at-arms with shields, obviously putting my shielded troops up through the center here just to absorb as much of the enemy fire as possible. 2 trebuchets, neither is blessed, but still they're going to be pretty powerful. 3 Knights of the Realm up here. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the chivalry, or heraldry I should say, on these guys. Always have a hard-on for Knights. 3 Grail Knights in the back. These guys have anti-large bonuses, so I needed those against some of Indie Pride's monsters. And then we have questing knights, backing these up. And then to round off my infantry units, I have 2 units of battle pilgrims, and I really like the armor that they have, or the padded leather built up. I don't know how successful this would be. It almost looks like something you would wear scuba diving. But anyways, I really like that little piece of armor. So these are the battle pilgrims, also going to help plug the gap. And then 2 more archer units in the rear. So a pretty huge force. I outnumber Indie Pride by a significant amount. I'm going to be moving up to the ridge. This is on a special custom battle map made by Tough. And it's just a grassland one, but it has a little bit of intricacies to it. The center here is pretty crazy. You have the pancakes of peasants lying around. And also a couple new units that I didn't mention. I have the Royal Hippogriff Knights. These guys are going to be moving forward, trying to scout around on the flank. And then I actually have 2 Yeoman Cavalry, and they are just Vanguard deployed, trying to scout around the rear of Indie Pride's forces. I didn't quite scout his Wild Riders as I do my pass, so I'm trying to sweep around, get behind Indie. Meanwhile, he has a bunch of his Way Watchers moving into position. I'm going to start shelling his position. You can watch that. I'm going to be hitting around his Spell Singer so he can just heal right up, but at least I want to start doing some preliminary damage. Weight Watchers are going to move up into position and start unloading on my guys. Luckily, I have my shielded front here, which is good. And as I absorb fire, I'm going to return it in kind with my trebuchets. They're not going to get the best of shots here. Some of them overshooting, so I got to be careful. And now Indy's going to move over with a couple more of his guys to try and deal with me. I'm going to roll in hot and heavy with my big blob of units. The pilgrims here, not pilgrims, sorry. These are just going to be simple mobs pushing forward with the paladin to reinforce. And that's merely to try and zone out his archers, force them away, and it's going to bring in Indy's forces here. And I'm moving up with my Grail Relique, and more of my pilgrims, and then the Fay as well. So this is just to keep him zoned away, and then we're going to push forward with some of my shielded units. They've taken a beating from the archer fire, but at least it's wasted on cheap units. Indy here did a smart move. He let my scouting troops get past the woods, and then he sprung an assault in the back with Wild Riders, and now I'm caught in a pretty tricky position where I have cavalry behind Indy's line, which is really good for me, but now they're being pursued. I do have incoming Royal Hippogriff Knights that I want to hit these Wild Riders. And now Indy's going to come back with 2 more Wild Riders and try and pincer my mounted yeomen in the rear. They don't have anywhere to charge into the back lines. I was hoping to get at his archers when I forced them back, but Indy's cautiously moving away, shoring up his battle lines, and he's going to come after my mounted yeomen. I should have executed a move away from this, but what I wanted to do was kind of precipitate a charge in the rear and swarm in with a lot of my cavalry. So you can watch this initial charge, and this is not something that's going to go well in my favor, but my cheap knights have to blood themselves in some fashion, and at least it's going to tie down the majority of his cavalry, and my guys here get absolutely slaughtered after having done just a little bit of damage against the Wild Riders, mostly HP damage, but that's about it. And I just wanted to pin his cav. I'm moving around with more units, but here I get a little bit of a microlapse as I'm charging through to get to his cav. I'm microing to try and get my peasants and battle lines up, and here Indy responds with his move with the Eternal Guards and these War Dancer Seers. I was trying to exploit some gaps in his archer formation, but I'm going to be too slow, and he's going to catch me right up here. I do pull out, but a couple of my guys get caught here with a net, and now his guys are going to move in to execute. So this is not going well for me. Cavalry in the back were absolutely obliterated before I could come in and reinforce and seize on that. My charge to save them is going to get counter-charge here. Straight up Eternal Guards with shields against Knights Errants with the prey of Anathrama. That's going to be really bad, but I have men-at-arms at least to back this up. Cavalry are going to be forced to reform. This is not something they want to do. Be told to pull back on a charge. Yeah, that's not ideal. But a lot of Wild Riders here with the reinforcement of his units. I'm not quite in a position to engage. And so now I'm going to try and pull up with my big, massive units, lots of infantry formations with paladins, and I figure, you know, if I'm going to have cavalry position on the flank and Indy's going to divert a lot of attention their way, then I might as well hit them through the front, and that's what I'm going to be doing, pushing with Grail Knights and a paladin all the way to the side. I want to try and envelop Indy, and then what I'm also going to be doing is pulling forward with my peasant bowmen. These guys are going to be meant to target his Treekin in the center. He's put a lot of damage onto my cavalry, focusing on the Knights of the Realm, which is a good pick, and they're going to be pulling on out of there, unfortunately. I'm going to have to sacrifice some of my knights to die because they were caught in that net as we saw. But here comes the mob units, and they're going to be told to just get into the lines, run amok, and start to hit his vulnerable archers. In the center, I've hit some of his guys. Spearmen are going to charge into the enemy and just try and brute force this, and then now some of his Treekin, I wanted to pull them out of position by having him target the mobs, and this is where my arrow fire, literally fire, is going to come in and hit these guys and do a lot of damage. I've got cavalry around the back, plus Royal Hippogriff Knights. This is going to scare away these Wild Riders, and this is the target I want to hit, his Way Watchers. Indy's going to form back around, do a double strike on my Grail Knights, and I'm pulling around with my Paladin. My battle line here is engaged. Cavalry is reeling back, but let's watch this main front. Peasants are crumbling super hard, but that's fine. That's what they're meant to do. And as they pull back, here come my reinforcements. Spearmen, shielded forces, and all the while, as Indy chews through my front ranks, I have my archers firing away at his more valuable units. So already his guys are at half strength, and now I'm pulling in with my forces. I get a charge up through here with the Grail Knights and Paladin and Royal Hippogriff Knights, all against these Wild Riders. But now these archers are going to turn around and focus fire on me. So I really need to get this cavalry re-engaged. I'm going to target some of his Wildwood Rangers, which is not an ideal move. I do hit a lot of them, and more of my knights are going to get through, hit his forces here, and then more are going to swing around wide while my artillery targets some of his War Dancers. Try and get my peasants to reform. I'm trying to micro over here, but at the same time, Indy's going to catch me flat-footed, and that's not good. My peasants are going to come back so I can reinforce a bit of this fight. My trebuchets are going to target this blob of units forming up around my guys. So I'm going to try and save that. Let's go back into the center. Going to put this on slow motion. Archers are doing their job, chipping away at Indy's flanks. My main battle line in the center is starting to collapse. I do have the Grail Relic here, trying to beef up my forces. The Fay is also nearby, buffing up my units. But it's not enough. I do have Foot Squires and other units double teaming these War Dancers, and I should win out. But my battle line is caving and then kind of reforming, so now I can pull them back into the fight. I just need to sustain this a little bit longer. In the rear, my Paladin's still fighting the enemy, but has gotten completely surrounded. These Wildwood Rangers have done good work cleaning up my forces in the back. I never really got the sufficient numbers around the rear to hit these archers. They would have been super vulnerable, but India's done a good job with lesser forces keeping me tied down. Let's go back to the center and look at all this crisscrossing bow fire. hitting all of our units. I do want to get stuck into the middle. Watch a little bit of the new units fighting it out. Looking really cool, and I love these new Bretonnia archers. I wish the fire was a little bit more realistic. It looks too arcadey, but I understand that's the style they're going for. Now Indy's broken through the center. The Fay is still here, and she's going to try and get some magical bombardments on these infantry, but they move out just in time. But my peasants are going to reform, and I'm going to start to hold down this side of the battlefield. The reinforcing strikes are doing a lot of damage to these Treekin, being shattered. In the back, however, I am shattered. And then on the right-hand side, where a lot of my forces were committed, my cavalry was stuck and slaughtered. The reinforcement of these very fast war dancers with Asserai spears is an excellent counter. This is almost something you'd see out of a historical army, kind of like Alexander, where they trained infantry to run alongside the cavalry with spears and then engage in the cavalry battles and really tip it in their favor. So that is something I guess the Wood Elves picked up from history, and it seems to be serving them really well. Plus, they fare pretty well against peasant mobs and battle pilgrims. So yeah, they're doing fairly well to me. I think had I brought maybe a bit more foot squires and infantry heavy, it would have countered him perhaps a bit better. Maybe even more archers and trebuchets. But Bretonnia, you know, what would Bretonnia be were it not for the cavalry? So I decided to bring some of that. Finally, I'm going to find a little bit of a gap to strike at Indy. I do have foot squires in the mix who get charged by enemy wild riders. So he always has these wild riders free, which are good, but I do get in at the rear of his archers with the Royal Hippogriff Knights and a couple more units coming back in, and they're going to be able to charge into the rear of this blob. So I'm finally starting to get some cracks into Indy's defenses, but perhaps it'll be too little, too late. In the center, some more freaking awesome action. The Spellsinger is actually here helping Indy turn the tide. And this is a really important moment. The Fay here is helping clean up the lines, saving my battle pilgrims and other forces amidst all the death and destruction. So she's doing a fairly good job of shoring myself up. I didn't want to get pulled into this trap where you don't really want to be pursuing Wood Elves at the final stages of battle because they'll tear you up with the archers. So I wanted to pull back to my archer line where I seem to have a lot of ammo, and where I have ammo I can do well fending off those big creatures. So I'm going to reform a bit, pull back my forces, and try and focus fire on wild riders. I'm going to commit to try and blunt this assault because I see Indy coming after my peasant archers. These guys are pretty much out of ammo, so I'm going to use them as bait to try and bring Indy in. The Fay's got to get in here. Indy casts a net on me. And so now we're going to have a bit of a fight over the hero here. I was hoping to pull her out of the fight, but now look at all these creatures coming in to try and deal with her, and now she's going to start wavering, being hit by the net, and then also being dealt a charge by these wild riders. They're proving their worth. They're going to be doing a lot of damage to me, and everyone's going to get in on here, and he's able to actually rout her. So that's going to be a big turning point when it comes to the morale of my peasants. They're going to start shattering my last cluster of units in the center with the Grail Relic still holding strong. It's helping to buff their morale. This is why they're still on the battlefield, but when the Fay leaves, that is about it for my forces. And so Indy's going to start to sweep around. A lot of his units at low health here, but the archers still at very strong ammo counts are going to be able to do, I mean, punishing damage to my remaining forces. Trebuchets have been firing the entire battle, doing a lot of good damage, but at the end, if I'm relying on the last remaining troops, I mean, the knights are all gone. All that's here is going to be the peasant forces. That's when you know Bretonnia has lost. So that was a really fun battle fought against Indy Pride. I think he brought a good, well, obviously counter build. A lot of the war dancers, obviously a good counter, and he just played much better than me. I, in this battle, had the advantage when it came to well, the positioning that I had, the numbers, and I just didn't exploit it. I threw everything to the mix. Something you'll often see people do, especially myself, is you kind of get caught with the sunk cost fallacy. So that was, I had a initial blunder where my mounted yeoman got caught out behind the enemy lines, and he had that nice ambush. And instead of accepting the loss and kind of regrouping and thinking more tactically From there, I decide to charge into their rescue and just precipitated blunder after blunder when I didn't really need to. I should have cut my losses, sat up on the hill, continued to bombard at a distance with my artillery, pick apart his more experienced units, and I think I would have won in that way. I had a huge cavalry advantage. I could have kept his forces from getting around the sides, forced Indy to charge into my center, shoot at my center, and that's where I would have kept, rank after rank of peasants absorbing his arrows. Meanwhile, my trebuchets would have been kept at a safe distance, and I should have expended all their ammo before having a charge. So that's probably how you should be facing against this kind of Wood Elf army. Do not do what I did. Keep your knights for the final stage of the battle when you can actually get in at his archers. You'll notice that every time I wasted my bowmen, every time I wasted my cavalry on a charge, they didn't have a clear strike at his archers. So you gotta wait till you have the opportunity to do that, that they're pinned and that you can get in and hit them. At the moment, I just didn't have that. And of course, my army composition didn't really help out too much. But yeah, nonetheless, a very fun battle, and we're going to head and end the replay here, see the final stats. One of the things that I did here is that CA fixed the bug which previously did not allow you to click on your allies and result stats. So I'm glad that now we can do that. Obviously, you can't see that in this scenario, but yeah. In the final stats here, you can see I brought more than twice as many men as Indy Pride. And lost a huge number. He only lost 900, so just much more cost-effective units that he brought to the battlefield. My knights here getting really not much done. I mean, they were charging against Wildwood Rangers, War Dancers, and Eternal Guards. Everything with spears, not much they could do against those guys. The juicier targets of the Way Watchers were always protected by Wild Riders, who just did really well. And my trebuchets started to rake up kills, but they could have been used more cost-effectively. Everyone else just not doing very much, but the archers actually doing a fair amount. So perhaps one of the builds you'll be seeing a bit more is tone down on the knights, bring a bit more of the archers and allow them and the trebuchets to do work. Invite your enemy to come at you, rebuff their flanking maneuvers with cavalry, and even if he pushes up through the center, have a couple cavalry units to charge into the center, blunt his approach, and just invite the enemy to you, which is kind of counter to what you would think you'd want to do with number superiority. But that's kind of what I learned from this battle. Hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for more, and yeah, a lot more Bretonnia content coming around the corner. See you in the next one. Peace out.